Now, the rest of the story.
Well, we're gonna go get it got. We're gonna put a few more 1,000 bushels into the bin to get that drying down, and I'm planning on switching over for beans because they're dry enough, they're ready to go. 40 degrees out, not really much of a cold start, I guess. This is what you got to do when it's yielding so well. I can't even begin to keep up with it, and Dad's already full. So the wagon was full, cart was full. I haven't really decided if it's because the corn's yielding so well or if it's because it's planted the long rows like it is. He is on that stretch that he's on right through there. That was the longest rows we had. And, well, as far as efficiency goes, the farther I have to drive out into the field to the cart, the more efficiency I lose. So I guess the cart is the one that's meant to bounce around between the field and the buildings if it needs to. And this is probably this is some really clean corn. It's in the 20s, but it's also the later 3rd of October. And at least they're not calling for as much rain now. They're calling for, what do we got, about 5 days, 6 days of running yet. Chance of rain tonight. Didn't really say a high chance, which I'm not hoping for much because I want to go cut beans tomorrow and get them done. But ideally, run out everything we need to here, we want to. I mean, this farm alone, at what it's running, will actually fill one of these bins all in its lonesome. So I know we get a lot of farmers. I'm not one of those people that say that, but better than expected. It's what we were hoping for, I guess, but what we were expecting wasn't what we're seeing as far as yields go. I had low expectations for this year, and it's for what the planter, everything we did to the planter has gotten a little bit more of the credit. Weather being unruly like it was, but having the plants spaced at the proper depth consistently and also spaced evenly apart like they should have been. I had germination issues because I wasn't getting it all into the ground like I really should have. Let me rephrase that. I wasn't getting it down into moisture because we were already that dry, and I wasn't comfortable dropping it down to 3 inches or more. I've planned it that deep before and it's came up, and that's easy street to having a head full of gray hairs too. So it's all right. See, for where Dad's at, he's basically filling the grain tank up. That, for where he's at, can't really see it. He's on top of the hill, but those passes, they go from this front waterway clear over to the road on the back side of the farm. I mean, they're long. They're not the longest rows we have. I think we got some mile-long rows on some of the bottom ground. But basically, he's getting a full grain tank in a pass, not around. A pass is just down or back. A round is going all the way down and all the way back, and he's definitely not getting a full round, and it's actually closer to just a pass and he's full. More moisture in it than what you typically would want or what we would typically do in the past. Not the wettest we've ever done. And oh, it's just nice seeing some of this stuff running. I mean, it brings our overall average up because we do know we have some ground that isn't going to do that great. So you get the highs mixed in with some of the lows, and you'll come out somewhere where you're all right. Well, I'm going through switching this over for soybeans. Hopefully we'll be able to run those tomorrow. Hit it with the air hose. That's why it looks so clean. The reason I get carried away trying to, you know, clean this off as much as I can whenever it's around home. I mean, we got the leaf blower too, but I like keeping it aired off when it's sitting here, largely because residue is accumulative and it builds up on all, like back behind the screen, that'll fill up, and all the little edges where you really don't think much about most definitely collect dirt, dust, corn leaves. And with this combine sitting outside, because of that, we can't get it in the shed unless we fold it back down. It's going to get rained on, and then having a bunch of rain on all of that built up material, you start getting into this situation. You see this, like that's like all the way across there. I just hit that with the air hose and I was able to get it out, but that's what happens when moisture collects in this stuff. It just firms right up and then you can't get rid of it. Now imagine if I didn't clean this off, I'd have a big pile of corn and soybean residue, and then what happens, you get this and it starts to rust away. And this is the last combine we get for decades, and I want to try to keep it as in good a shape as we possibly can. And by doing that, I went through, I greased it, hit it with the air hose, cleaned everything off. I mean, not perfect, but it's significantly better than what it was. I got to switch it over for beans, which doesn't take a whole lot. Ryan was here, helped me put the knives back in, which is on this lever here. You just back this off, which is tightened down so they can't slide out, and then all the knives will slide up into the rear discharge, and yeah, we're still good. Fueled it up and it's pretty well ready to go. I went through, greased it with my new grease gun. I wanted to show you guys this really quick. I don't use the electric grease gun, mainly just for the combine. Herschel got this a few years ago. Been a big work saver. Probably saved us a lot of bearings too, because at least everything's getting over greased, if anything. Not that I don't like using that. If that thing gives up, I'll buy a new one. This is what I got for greasing the combine, because the combine uses it's extreme duty grease. You buy it at the local Deere dealer. I think the stuff's like $11 a tube. Doesn't bother me one bit paying for expensive grease, especially for heavy duty, extreme duty, whatever it is, which is also why it gets its own dedicated grease gun, because I don't want Dad or Ryan greasing the rotary mower or the grain carts if they don't need it with expensive grease. We still use heavy duty. We're using the whatever Blaine's brand right now, just because of that whole supposed grease shortage a couple of years ago. But we'll be back to using the Deere heavy duty stuff too once our current stockpile runs down. But as you can see here, it's got 2 settings. I didn't know this was a thing. I broke our other one. The spring right here, yeah, that went kapoosh, and I knew I was in the market for a different grease gun, so went to the dealership the next day, not for this, and I saw this on the shelf. I had no idea that it had the dual use option, but it's set to volume right now, which means when you pump the handle, you're going to get a full injection of grease, which is good. Well, it has the option for a pressure option. So what this does is it takes about half of your handle's movement, but as long as you can keep the nozzle on the grease zerk, it will shove grease into pretty well any grease zerk you can find. I had 2 on the back end of, well, it's on the axles, I had a hard time getting them to take grease with the electric grease gun. I tried it with that tonight, and four squeezes, and I actually had grease coming out of it. So, it's happy there. We did have at one point the lock and lube for the hand grease gun. I like the lock and lube. It's great. I have a couple grease zerks on the combine. I can't get to that very easy with the lock and lube handle because it's got that thumb for locking and unlocking your zerk. With just the standard end on it, I can at least get to it from up above a lot easier than having to go down underneath and then pull that drive belt to rotate it around so I can see what I'm doing. So other than that, I got to change a belt on the other side of the feeder house, and whatever setting is the rotor speed and the fan speed and everything on the monitor, we'll be good to go. The goal is to hopefully have a chance to do the last of our beans in the next 2 days. If we could start right away in the morning and everything was there, I mean 9:30 start running, we'd probably be done in a day and a half, but I'm figuring it'll probably be noon at best before we could even potentially start, because we got to move combine, head, truck, 2 tractors and carts up to the farm. And by the time we drive the combine up there and hook it up, and I'll probably run as long as we really can the first day, but they're calling for rain again in another 5 to 6 days. And in that time, I'd like to get the beans out, potentially take out a bunch of corn. And Ryan, he just put the 76 away. All of the 30 or so acres of corn we got here has been chopped up with the Rhino 4155. We'll be hitting it with the other baler with the knives in it, and gonna bale all 30 acres, and we'll see where we end up. I don't know honestly what we need for bales. I know Ryan wants well over 100. I'm looking at least 100 because I want 50 bales for my molasses trial that need to be wrapped, and then I want 50 bales wrapped just to have them saved from the weather, and then whatever else we stack outside that we'll be feeding immediately. And then we also got to go down to my parents cattle and make a bunch down at my place. So a lot more fodder than we typically do. We only do 200, 250. The reason we're pushing for more is because even though we do 250 in recent years, it seems like we are still holding back and not putting out as much as we would need to when you get towards the end of winter, early spring, because you think you get through the cold weather, you're out of the woods. Well, the problem is then you get to early spring when it's just wet and muddy. That actually goes through more bedding than, the cold and snowy. The fodder soaks up the mud and the water and the rain or the melting snow, and it takes a lot to keep them bedded. And with me having, hopefully, I hate saying the H word, having a bunch of calves next spring, plus all of my dad's cattle, all of Ryan's cattle, I would rather have more than not enough, because I like putting fodder out for my cows throughout the summer. Works for me, works really well for me. Like everybody says, the lower quality feed from the valley that we made the other day, the cows don't really seem to like. The cows would actually eat the corn fodder that I'm putting out before they'll eat the grass hay. So maybe I just feed a lot of fodder and not worry so much about it if they don't want the grass hay. At least I can do something with it. So that's all I got for tonight. I want to finish this up and got to go home and wrestle the kids. I hear they're getting the better of my wife. So until next time, hopefully the next video is a combining soybeans video. We're less than 100 acres, just under it. And then hopefully we're gonna send a bunch of corn down the road. So wish us luck.